What's up, fellas? In the first video of the day, I kind of feel like we have to talk about Luka. We have to talk about the Mavs. We have to talk about that crazy game between them and the Grizzlies last night, kind of how it's informed, my opinion of the Mavs, kind of confirm some things that I thought about them as we talked about in a video about them earlier in the week. We'll sprinkle some Grizzly stuff in there as well. And we'll just kind of talk about what happened last night. But really quickly, before we get started, if you enjoy content like this, then consider subscribing. I upload twice a day, every single day on this channel. It's the most consistent NBA content on YouTube. So if that's something you're looking for, then as I said, consider subscribing. If you're new here, by the way, what's up? My name is Tucker. You can also leave a like rating on the videos as well, and you can check me out at various socials in a Linktree link down in the description below. With those things said, let's talk about this game last night. So for those of you that missed the video a handful of days ago, I basically talked about the Mavs and I said they've been playing really well lately. Luka's been shooting the ball really well post All-Star break, and it's just a scary team, right? This is prior to the Jamal Murray injury, so a potential matchup between them and the Nuggets in the postseason hadn't really materialized. But regardless, it isn't a team that I would be looking forward to playing if I was one of those top teams in the West, because Dallas is going to be around the 6 or the 7 seed, and despite, Luka's pushback on some of the playing game stuff, it still is just a team that you really wouldn't want to play against for a handful of different reasons, whether it be because they're playing better, because of the talent level on the team, but mostly and primarily, it's about Luka. And I think this game last night kind of confirmed some of the points that I made in that video. The primary one being, there's a lot of power in having the best player on the court in a given game, in a given playoff series, and I think in, not all, but in at least some of those, playoff series or playoff games that the Mavs could be involved in potentially this postseason, you can make the argument that Luka would, kind of qualify them for that, right? And again, last night was such a good illustration of that because Luka's the best player on the floor, and it's not really a game they have much business winning. They weren't playing particularly well for most of the game. They weren't defending particularly well. Grayson Allen was making every shot that he looked at. And then down the stretch with 4 minutes left, they're down like 6 or whatever. And Luka makes a 3, assists on a basket. They get to the rim, all the free throw stuff back and forth. And then, of course, he makes the crazy shot at the end. And there's just something to be said for having a guy that you really, truly believe in on an individual basis. And I think that the Mavs certainly do really believe in Luka as, their guy, right? And I think there's something to be said for that when it comes to making a postseason run. And personnel-wise, it's still not a fantastic roster. Porzingis has been playing better and has definitely been better as kind of that secondary scorer type guy. Jalen Brunson is really, really good, by the way. I'm kind of putting together a list of players in the league right now that are better than people realize, or having a better season than people realize, and Jalen Brunson is on that list. They were even running some late game like Jalen Brunson with Luka as the screener stuff down the stretch of the game. And so they've got good players, but especially defensively, there's certainly issues on this roster. But again, there's just something to be said for having a guy that's as magical as Luka is on the offensive end of the floor, and a guy that people respect and really believe in the postseason, and has proven himself to be a pretty clutch player. Granted, most of the time that's in the regular season, but is a guy that is not afraid of the moment and can make big shots. And you can call that one last night lucky if you want to, but yeah, I think it just goes to show that Luka is just that special of a player sometimes. And again, in a game that they weren't playing well, they weren't defending well, Grayson Allen was making everything, they still managed to find a way to win the game against a Grizzlies team that's really good, by the way. It's not like the Grizzlies are slouches, and, all those points that I made in that previous video are kind of not necessarily confirmed completely by that game last night, but it basically was just illustrating that, hey, this team is better than their record. They're not your typical 7 seed. Most 7 seeds do not have a guy of Luka's caliber, and they're not playing as well as the Mavs have been playing over the last 15 or so games. And as they continue to, figure some things out defensively, maybe they sprinkle in some zone a little bit more, as Carlisle has been prone to do, as they threw in some last night as well. Luka continues to shoot the ball better. They stay healthy, obviously, with Porzingis. They're going to be really good. And then for them moving forward, it's just going to be about, can we find wings that work well around Luka? Can we find guys that can defend? Maybe there's a Porzingis trade in there, as we talked about in, kind of one of those rumors videos the other day. But regardless, the Mavs are in a really, really good spot. Now, on the other side of it for Memphis, this, again, another team we just talked about. It's such a weird thing about this team because for most of my basketball fandom, I didn't really think too much of Memphis unless they happened to be really, really good, which, for parts of the grit and grind era, they were really good. But then once that era was over, they were very, very much an afterthought. And I think they've kind of settled into that in people's minds. But this Memphis team, whether it be from a roster perspective or an organizational perspective, is really, really good. Like they just know what they're doing. They have a direction, and there's no chip on their shoulder. There's no weird thing about, oh, we're a smaller market team. They're just good. They just know what they're doing. They know how to draft and develop players. They know what they have in Ja. They know what they hopefully have in Jaren Jackson Jr. And even though some of the future stuff can be a little bit murky, as I talked about in a video yesterday, the day before, it still is just a team that's going to go out there, they're going to compete, and they have an identity. They know who they are as an organization as a whole, and they have a plan. And their plan revolves around just being as good as they can be on a night-to-night basis and continuing to grow and improve and progress together. And they've got some different options there. I think, the development of Grayson Allen is just another illustration of the difference between teams like Memphis, right, and teams that are perennially near the bottom of the league, and teams like Minnesota, teams like Sacramento, that have an ability to take guys like Grayson Allen, who's not the only example here, but we'll just use him, off the scrap heap, essentially, from other teams, and develop them into guys that are usable players. I think you can look at a team, like Brooklyn over the last couple of years that have taken guys like Joe Harris, or someone, late in the first round like Karis LeVert, late in the first round like Jared Allen. They just have an ability to develop guys and to turn them into something. And when you can start doing that with lower level players, obviously your ability to do that with higher level players, creates guys like John Moran, hopefully Jaren Jackson Jr. And that's something you can see a little bit in the Mavs as well. Someone like Dorian Finney-Smith that people didn't really think much of has been a nice productive wing for them over the last couple of seasons. Jalen Brunson was someone that a lot of people liked coming out of the draft, but some of the size stuff was a question mark. He's become a really good player for them. Maxi Kleber's another one. And that probably is the biggest distinguishing factor between like what's a good organization and what's a bad one. Is not necessarily, oh, they get the superstars, but it's like how do they improve around the margins? Memphis is probably one of the better teams in the league in improving around the margins. Hopefully they continue to do that and kind of go and contrast some of the stuff that I talked about in that rebuild video for them the other day. But overall, it was just an awesome game, and I think it showed what this postseason could be like. In a postseason, in a season in which I think a lot of people were they're preparing for disappointment. Maybe it's not that they aren't excited, but they're just preparing for the possibility that it isn't as good of a postseason as they want it to be. I think last night is an illustration of like, hey, especially in the West, it's going to be crazy, crazy competitive. There's going to be so many teams that have so much talent. And, the fact this Mavs team is a 7 seed definitely goes to show that. The fact that the Grizzlies might not even make the playoffs, they might have to either fight their way in through the play-in game or just not make it at all, shows how much talent there truly is, again, specifically in the Western Conference. And it is going to be a postseason to remember, where we're going to have moments, hopefully, just like this from Luka yesterday. So the overall points to take away from this are there's a bit of magic here around Luka and around the Mavs right now. And when you start winning games like last night that you really don't have too much business winning, that's when you start to feel like there's something truly, truly special brewing. And I think that's starting to be the feeling there in Dallas. Granted, their matchup in the first round is going to be tough no matter what. You know what I mean? Like if they're the 7th seed, they're looking at either the Jazz, the Suns, or the Clippers, none of which are teams that are going to be pushovers by any means in the first round. And I'm not even saying they're going to win a series, but I'm just saying they're going to make it competitive. They're going to make it interesting, and all of that kind of revolves around Luka and the magic that he brings to the table. And then for Memphis, it's just the same old Grizzlies that they've been for about a year and a half now, where it's just like they're going to be continually surprising. If you don't show up to play, Memphis is going to make you pay for it. And on a night-to-night basis, they compete, they play the correct way, they guard, they're unselfish, and it's just such a nice way to watch basketball. Like if we had a full series, or if we had a play-in series of 2 games between those 2 teams, I don't think anybody would complain. It was an awesome, awesome game, and shows kind of the NBA at its best. You know what I mean? There's not 5 superstars out there all taking mid-range jump shots, and it's not 1,000 ball screens every time down the floor. There's movement, there's spacing. At times, at least for Memphis, there's some defense. The Mavs definitely have some issues defending, but it's competitiveness, right? And I think that's the NBA at its best. I think that's one of the things that people kind of have negative things to say about the NBA at times, is just that they're not competitive enough. But I don't think you could say that was the case at all last night, especially given how the season is going, all the stuff they've had to kind of fight through and get through throughout the season. It was just an awesome, awesome game to see last night, and I'm sure you guys enjoyed it. I enjoyed it as well, and it made me, we're kind of at that point now where like I'm just ready for the playoffs to start, and it made me that much more excited for the postseason to begin, because it is going to be really, really awesome to see, where all of these teams end up in the standings, and just what they can all do. Because if we learned anything from the bubble last year, it's that crazy things can happen when there's crazy circumstances around the league. And even as things appear to be getting better, I think it's still clear that the postseason is going to have some crazy circumstances around it in the NBA. But yeah, that is going to be the end of the first video of the day. And I thank you guys very much for watching. Once again, my name is Tucker. If you missed any of my previous videos, then be sure to check out the boxes on screen. You can also check out more videos from me on the channel as a whole. Again, for the most consistent NBA content on YouTube, you can leave a like rating on the videos as well if you're enjoying them. And you can check me out at various socials and a Linktree link down in the description below. With all those things said, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and I will see you all next time.